Hello everyone and welcome to my channel. Welcome back if you are watching my vlogs for the first or second time, and nice to meet you if you are new here. I thought to make a video about my reads from this year because actually I started making a list of all of my reads from the beginning of the year, and I realized that I have read 26 books so far this year. It's 2026, so I thought it's kind of like an iconic number. So I was like, okay, I should maybe make some kind of like wrap-up video, also because we are mid of year, or I mean, now we are in Q3, but like we already passed mid-year. So I thought it's a good way to kind of like gather my thoughts, also to share with you the books that I really found valuable and worth reading. And I am actually having currently like a huge backlog of books that I want to read, because I bought a couple of books back when I was in Paris that I'm currently reading. It's The Goldfinch from Donna Tartt and Destroyed Woman from Simone de Beauvoir. And then on top of this, I went to the library, from which I made a separate YouTube or Instagram Reels video that I can link it below. So you can see the books that I lent for my holidays and that I'm planning to read. So actually I have a lot of books to read during this couple of weeks. I'm not sure if I managed to read all of them, but I would love to, but I don't want to take any pressure. I just want to enjoy reading them. So that said, one of the books that I'm currently reading is Paulo Coelho's Adultery. I'm reading it in Finnish, so the real name is Uskottomuus, which is like something to do with unfaithfulness. So actually the translation is pretty weird. But I wanted to make a separate video of this book and another book that I read from Paulo Coelho, because I actually really like these two books. So I read two books from him this year, and these are definitely amongst the best books that I read, but I'm not gonna include them in the 5 books of this video because I am gonna talk about them in another video. But just a heads up, if you're planning to read Paulo Coelho, read those two books. I read 11 Minutes and this Adultery. Some of his works are very religious, so let's go into this topic in another video, but anyways, I can recommend those two. I feel like I talked about it in the previous video as well, but I usually tend to pick up books based on my feelings, and all of these books revealed to me something or taught to me something about being a human, whether it was about love, whether it was about identity, about injustice, discovering yourself. It was a lot of big themes in these books, and I feel like that's why all of them were so impressive. And also in all of these books, they kind of contained several themes, so I really enjoyed reading these, even if they are from different decades, from different countries. I feel like they are just, in general, globally, books that are impressive and carry a lot of good themes. The first book is Sylvia Plath's Bell Jar, which is published in 1963, and it's a semi-autobiographical novel, so it's basically not based on her life completely, but you can see that there's some similarities between her struggle with herself and the main character's struggle with herself and her identity. So basically, the book starts when the main character, Esther, is working in a New York fashion magazine, and she's doing an internship there. And the internship ends and she goes back home, and she gets rejected from a very prestigious writing course that she was looking forward to going, which kind of leads her to spiral about her life, about what she wants and what she is expected to do. And for the main character, this kind of bell jar is just, it represents the feeling of not being able to breathe, and you're so stuck within yourself and your thoughts. And what makes this book very impressive is the honesty, because she talks about depression in a very honest way. And at the same time, I feel like this book is such a great read for anyone in your 20s. You may have seen also this quote going all around social media, which is very popular, and it talks about the fig tree. So basically the idea is that in the fig tree there's many different branches, and you don't really know in the similar way which way to go in your life. And I feel like this is such a great read for anyone in their 20s, because at least for me, I could relate to this phrase a lot, because sometimes even in my own life I think about the different paths that are possible for us, which first of all is very privileged if you even have a chance to choose your path or even consider different paths. But yeah, for me, for example, I might consider, do I want to focus on my career, Do I want to live in Paris? Do I want to, I don't know, have this slow life in south of France, or I don't know, back at home? Or do I want to focus on writing? Do I want to, I don't know, do something completely else? Do I want to be a stay-at-home mom? Who knows? So it's somehow so descriptive of all of these thoughts, and I feel like I keep seeing people posting this like different paths in the fig tree, like, oh, I want to experience like being, I don't know, a career woman in New York, or like being a writer and living your slow life, being a stay-at-home mom, being an author, having my own coffee shop. So I feel like this book, just because of this small piece, is already very worth to read. But that said, I would not recommend reading this if you are going through something difficult in your life, because it can be a very difficult read, and it deals with a lot of mental health issues, and the way how she writes about depression is very descriptive. So if you are having some issues, maybe save this book for later. The second book is Sputnik Sweetheart from Haruki Murakami, and actually I fell in love with his works a year ago when my friend introduced me to his works, and I first read Norwegian Wood, and I read it in one day, in 24 hours, and it was great. And then I read another book, Kafka on the Shore, and then I kind of forgot about his existence, but then I read some of his short stories, and I was like, wow, I really feel like reading a proper Murakami book. So I bought his book called Sputnik Sweetheart, and since I'm also at the era of reading love stories and somehow I find them relatable, or I really enjoy reading them, I wanted to pick up something more, let's say, realistic, or like a love story, because he also has a lot of books which are just very, I don't know, magical, or like magical realism, and I sometimes don't really find them so entertaining, or it might be weird or hard for me to read. I simply don't enjoy it so much. This book is narrated from the point of view of a third person, but basically it's a book about Sumire, who falls in love with Miu, who is an older woman. So it's a book about two women, and this woman, Sumire, she's a little bit lost in her life. It's a lot about self-discovery, but also about falling in love with this kind of unreachable target. And then Miu, she hires her to work with her, and then after that they travel to Greece together, and Sumire disappears, and then this third person, who is the friend of Sumire, travels there to kind of figure out what happened to Sumire and how their relationship developed with Miu. I have never read Murakami. I feel like I could recommend this as even the first book to read, because it's relatively short. The writing style is kind of like calm, reflective, and I would say it's still pretty easy to read. The language is not difficult, and it has like a nice portion of the magical realism that is usually featured in Murakami's books, but it's still not too much. And the third book is If Beale Street Could Talk, from James Baldwin, and it's published in 1974, and it's basically a book about racism and injustice in the US back at the time. And surprise, surprise, this book is also kind of a love story, but a very sad one. So basically it talks about two teenagers who are 19 years old, and the opening scene is about how the woman is visiting her husband in jail, and the woman is also pregnant. So the woman, I think she was called Tish, is visiting her husband, and she's pregnant, and the husband is accused of a crime, and we actually never know in the book what crime he committed to. But it's a description of their love, but also of the love of the family. And what I found really beautiful in this book was how Baldwin wrote about unconditional love, whether it was between this couple or whether it was between the family, so the family of Tish, and how they were also guarding for the husband who was going to be prisonized. At the same time, this book brings a lot of light for injustice, for wrongful imprisonment, and how this has been and is still an issue. And it kind of beautifully describes the feelings in a very deep way, what these people are going through, how it impacts the family, how it impacts the person who is imprisoned, how kind of everything is evolving around this. And the book is also very hard and harsh to read. There's a lot of scenes that are very, very heavy, I would say, But at the same time, it's an important book to read, I think, for all of us. And it was also very beautiful in terms of the love story of Tish and the husband. So I can definitely recommend this book. But again, in the same way as for Bell Jar, I would not recommend reading this if you are going through something heavy or something difficult. Anyways, thank you for watching. It was my second video of this kind of like yapping format, so don't be too harsh on me. If you have any ideas what you want to hear about in the next videos, for example, if you are interested in hearing about the book that I read or about my thoughts in specific authors, let me know in the comments. I will definitely be making more of these. I am thinking of making one from Annie Ernaux, who is my favorite author. So stay in tune for this, and see you in the next video.